Jim West, Desperado, Rough Rider. No, you don't want nada. None of this. Six gunning this, brother running this. Buffalo soldier, look, it's like I told you. Any damsel that's in distress, be out of that dress when she meet Jim West. Rough necks, go check the lawn.
Hey guys, we're out here with the 2019 KX450. I've been doing a lot of testing on this bike, and I think I've got some great tips for you guys. We're going to touch on 5 topics: suspension, handling, brakes, engine, and ergonomics. So let me get right into it. The first thing I wanted to do with this bike was just make it comfortable for me. So I changed the handlebars to my favorite McGrath Renthal bend. The new Raptor foot pegs, they're 2 millimeters wider, 2 ounces lighter, and they're going to be less expensive than the previous version. They really hold your foot onto the motorcycle. And then of course we've got our favorite SDG seat that's got ribs for keeping us on the bike. And then I just cleaned up the cockpit a little bit. There was just so many buttons on these electric start bikes that we used some of our ride engineering buttons to kind of replace the whole shot device and the start button.
Front and center, now when you look back in, who that is? I'm the back for your help. Looking damn good though, if I can say it myself. Only Douglas is a madman.
So as far as suspension goes, I'm working with Brandon at AHM. Yeah, the bike doesn't have bad suspension stock, but it did have some harsh spots in the mid-stroke, and I wasn't able to use up all the travel with the shock. So Brandon worked really hard with me, and we had about 3 revalves in this motorcycle, and we really have the suspension working well. Super progressive and very plush. Now let me tell you a little bit about the changes we did to make this bike handle better. We went from pretty good to really excellent. And the things that we've done is we've added a performance link on the rear, and we've also changed the triple clamp offset. This year I totally redesigned the triple clamps. We changed the bottom clamp so it flexes more, and we've made the top clamp wider so that it gives you more precise handling. They also save 8 ounces on this motorcycle. The link gets you full shock travel. It gets the bike squatting and hooking up better out of corners, and it's gonna allow you to see a little bit of those rubber marks on the rear fender that you may not be seeing with the stock linkage.
I'm happy to be working with the ride engineering guys. With this setup, it makes it more comfortable and easier to ride, and I personally have the same setup on my Supercross bike, and with the ride engineering 21.5 millimeter triple clamps, and then with the new link they came out with for the 2019 KX450, it helps handling and cornering. With this setup, it makes it night and day difference. So it's almost like you can't have one without the other.
Okay, the brakes. Kawi revised the front brake system, and it's very powerful, maybe a little bit too on and off stock. By replacing the caliper with our billet brake caliper, and by replacing the front brake line, you can get a much more progressive front brake system that's very powerful, but also very easy to modulate. Great for guys that like to drag their brakes through the corners.
With the billet front brake caliper, it really helps the front brake feel, which coming into corners makes it quite a bit better. You can charge in harder and also have more feel of the corners.
As far as this engine package, the Kawi motor is awesome this year. It really only needs a little bit of a mapping adjustment. We've got an FMF slip-on that adds a little more over rev and removes some weight. Actually, the other thing that I feel is kind of part of the engine package is the Renthal chain and sprockets. I highly recommend using a 1453 gearing on this bike. It really works great, and it also helps work with the rear suspension, removing some of the torque that it puts on the rear wheel.
The overall engine package of the new 2019 KX450, it suits me well. It's a smoother power. It doesn't really hit too hard off the bottom, so it's not really trying to throw you off the back of the bike. And FMF that we have on this bike, it helps give it a little more grunt at the bottom, and with just that little bit, I think it was key to what we needed.
In closing, we added some of my favorite Bridgestone tires, the X20s, which work amazing. And I just want to give you guys a few little setup tips on this bike. The chassis is very sensitive to how you set it up. I highly recommend running the forks between 3 and 5 millimeters from flush, and running only 103 millimeters of sag with our linkage. That puts enough weight on the fork to make the fork feel nice and plush. With this motorcycle, if you lower the back too much, believe it or not, the fork gets extremely harsh. So that's pretty much it, guys. I think you'll really enjoy enjoy this bike if you make some of the changes we suggest.
Production KX450 that comes off the showroom floor is a great bike, but with these upgrades that we have with Ride Engineering, FMF, and some other companies, it makes the bike much more enjoyable to ride and a lot easier to ride as well. And it's something that I recommend if you have one of these 2019 KX450s.
You're bad, any drawing on West Best with a pen and a pad, don't even think about it. 6 gun weighing a ton, 10 faces and turn just for fun. Sun up the sundown, rolling around, see where the bad guys are to be found and they go down. The defenders in the West, rushing on pretenders in the West. Don't mess with us, 'cause we in the when I roll into the when I stroll into the when I bounce into the right. When I roll into the when I stroll into the when I bounce into the when I roll into the when I stroll into the Done it again, y'all. Done it again.